I call this meeting of Sylvania City Council for September 16th, 2024 to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Ham?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Here.
Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Scott? Here. Mrs. Westfall?
Mrs. Westfall is excused. 6 members of City Council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. We welcome all of you to our City Council meeting for this evening and ask that you join us for our Pledge of Allegiance. This meeting led by Mr. Hanson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is additions to the agenda, and I would like to add as the last agenda item, whatever that number turns out to be, an executive session to discuss real estate, purchase or sale of real estate. Mr. Fry, any additions?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Members of City Council? Hearing none. Captain Eubaker?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Shaw?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schreier?
Nothing, Mr.
And Ms. Bryant?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the agenda for this evening's meeting is approved. First on that agenda is item 4, is approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on September the 3rd. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the meeting minutes for the council meeting of September 3rd, 2024 as submitted. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve those September 3rd meeting minutes as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and those meeting minutes are approved. Agenda item 5, we're pleased to welcome representatives of the Sylvania Township Fire Department. We have both Oliver Turner here, Chief Nye, and Chief Bennett. Welcome to all of you. Also representing the Levy Committee, we have Susie Nowak. Thank you all for being here. I don't know the other gentleman's name here.
That's right, Scott. Thank you.
Come on up to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Chief and I want to thank you for our welcome that you always make us feel at your meetings, so we appreciate that. What we're here for tonight, and I know that you like to keep your presentations short, and there's a lot of information here, so we'll try to move as quickly as possible and make ourselves available after and whenever you have any questions. What I'm going to present to you today is our 2024 needs assessment. We do these to evaluate our staffing, our resources, and our utilization if we need to make changes based on what we find. So some of the goals that we look for when we're doing this is to effectively respond to increasing incidents and transports, train for dangerous conditions and emergencies, continue responsible asset management, stewardship of our public resources, our high-quality services for citizens and stakeholders, try to foster accountability and community engagement, and maintain excellence as the second largest department in the area and one of the largest in Northwest Ohio. So what we do with that is we look at our numbers, and one of the main numbers that we look at here is our incident totals. You'll see in this time period from 2014 to 2023, we've had a steady increase, except for 2020, which obviously we had a decrease in calls because of COVID, but we still stayed pretty close on par. What we found is from the 2014-2023, we had a 60% increase, over 60% increase in incidents. And just in the last 5 years, 28% of those are greater. So along with that, our transports have also went up. You'll see from 2018 to 2023, we've had a steady climb. Once again, 2020 kind of drops just slightly. We use a two-tone graph for you. Our blue bar is your Sylvania Fire Department's transports themselves. And then the orange part is the Lucas County Life Squad transports that took place in Sylvania, which we staffed with Life Squad 6. I can direct your attention to August of 24, you'll see that bar is flipped because since August 5th, we have taken over all transports and Lucas County does not exist anymore. So you'll see that our numbers will be all Sylvania Fire from that point on. We've shown a 57.7% increase since 2018 in our transports. So just to give you an idea, a lot of questions get asked, why do we staff like we do? Well, we use NFPA as a form of standard. They recommend 16 to 17 members used on a standard 2,000 square foot house fire. They also recommend 27 to 28 members if it's a garden style apartment type situation. Or if it's a high-rise building, we could use as many as 42, 43 members. They also recommend for EMS staffing as well. On an emergency, ALS emergency, they recommend a minimum of 2 ALS trained or paramedic trained individuals and 2 basic trained individuals for a total of 4 at a minimum. So just to show you, we just took a little sampling of some of those larger buildings that we have, but there are many more throughout the city and township. So what we have to look at then is maintaining our balance between runs and resources when it comes to these types of calls and these increased incidents. So one thing that we looked at is overlapping incidents, and what that is when one of our units goes on a call, that means a second unit gets a call at the same time or within the period that they're on that first scene. We call that an overlapping incident. Along with our increasing incidents, you see an increase each year of those situations. So what does that really mean? Well, if you look at 2023, we had 7,568 total incidents. 4,740 times we had duplicate calls. Now, what I'm going to show you in the next few slides, what that really means to our utilization and staffing and our resources, but what it truly means is out of 365 days in 2023, there was 4,740 times we were nearly or completely depleted of resources in Sylvania. We would have had to have counted towards mutual aid in order to get help. So just to give you how this looks, I kind of did a graphical depiction of what vehicles we have at each station so that you can see them visually. Engines, trucks, and ambulances. Just because we have these vehicles at those stations, it doesn't mean that they're staffed. It just means that those are resources we have available. What I did do, though, is put at each station the typical staffing that we have on a minimum staffing day. We staff 5 people here in the city of Sylvania at Station 1. Station 2 on McCorden Central, we have 3 plus a battalion chief. Station 3, we have 3 at Whiteford and Monroe. And Station 4 at Sylvania Centennial, we have 5. So what that looks like is we're able to staff one or another units at some stations. So what I mean is, 1 is fully staffed with both an engine and an ambulance. 2 has an engine and a battalion chief. And then 3s and 4s uses what's called cross staffing. So based on the call, they pick what vehicle they're going to take, and then they go. So just because the resources are available, we don't necessarily have them because of staffing. So to give you an idea, on a typical EMS run, because of that standard that we try to follow, we send an engine and a medic. So in this situation, on a standard EMS run, we send truck 63, medic 61. That depletes Station 3 of any resources in that area, and then the others you can see that are left. So if we go ahead and make 2 EMS runs, which we talked about having 64 or better % of the time, you'll see that at least 2 stations are depleted, and what's left is a couple engines, but there's no transport unit available for any patient that needs to be transported. If that first patient that we talked about gets more serious, then we have to call for additional help, and you can see that takes out 3/4 of our stations. The reason that this is that we need additional manpower on these calls because the services that we're providing aren't like they were years ago. We are now providing similar resources that these patients would get in the first 30 minutes of the emergency room. So it's actually in our protocols and by request of the emergency rooms that we actually stay on scene until we can stabilize. So that increases our scene times, but also increases our manpower. If we add in, instead of a standard EMS accident, we do an EMS accident and an actual accident, you'll see that we take a few more resources there, and just on those 2 calls, once again, 3/4 of our stations are depleted, and we only have 1 unit available at Station 4. And I just grabbed some random samplings of how this kind of stuff can happen. There's multiple others that can deplete our resources as well. So you take an EMS call, you've got the accident, most times there's more than 1 patient involved because there's usually more than 1 car. So at that point, we're already calling for mutual aid to have somebody come transport a patient for us, and that leaves nobody else for the rest of our residents. On a structure fire, like I said, minimum 16, that is our minimum staffing. So we would send everybody that we have available to the fire on top of a chief, a Springfield engine, and a Richfield engine. And we do that because most of the time we end up needing additional help. But on top of that, we try to bring them into the district, so if another call happens, they can handle that call while we're fighting the fire. But you'll notice that if another call comes in, our closest mutual aid resources are already here helping us, so that anyone else that would need help, it would come from further away. And that's the point I try to make with this one here. So units required for 2 standard accidents, you can see that totally depletes our entire staff and resources. This happens frequently in winter, but get rain after a period of dry like we had multiple accidents go. If it's happening to us, it's happening to other areas, so sometimes we can't even count on our mutual aid to be readily available. So what's our current and planned staffing model? Well, we put up here that from 2018 to 2024, what that looks like. We had an increase of incidents at 28.2%. But we've only increased the staffing 15%. And I've highlighted 2020 as a year where with COVID, but it was also the last levy that was approved. So with that approval, we added 3 individuals in 2021 and 3 more in 2022, and we've held steady from that point on. So what we're looking at is we do have a levy on the ballot for November. It's issue 14, and if this were to be approved by the voters, our plan would be to add 3 more firefighter paramedics in 2025 and 3 more in 2027. We would then evaluate whether or not the incident totals and the actual financial figures work to add 3 more in 2029 to bring us up to a total of 78. As far as assets, I'll just kind of go through these quickly, but if you have any questions, this will be available online as well. We have a lot of high dollar items that need to be maintained or replaced. We take very good care of our equipment, take most things to the end of their service life. So we have assets, capital equipment that need to be replaced. We have permanent improvements that need to be taken care of. And we also have apparatus schedule replacement that, once again, we usually take them to the end of service life where they have to be replaced at that point. So some of the fiscal considerations with this. Overall, we have 12.05 initial mills that we work off of. That was initial. They currently have an effective millage of 6.73 and some change there. So that's what we're currently operating off of. So as far as our fiscal trends and our cash carryover, we try to shoot to have 2.2 million to 3 million carryover. You can see we maintain that through the end of 2024. But it also shows that with this next levy need, if we don't get that, then we also, our current operations could suffer because of that, because that number will continue to roll down. So the 2.5 that's going to be on that levy issue 14 will generate just over 4.2 million. That means an owner of a $200,000 home at 2.5 mils would pay $14.58 per month, or $175 per year. So with the goals of those increases that we would like to make, we want to implement a staffing model to maintain our response times, implement resources to maintain excellent transport service, implement resources to comprehensively prepare for overlapping calls that we talked about, train for dangerous conditions, continue responsible stewardship, and offer high-quality services to the citizens and stakeholders, and also foster accountability and community engagement. Have all our contact information there. You know that you can call and ask us at any time. We're going to put this presentation on the websites as well, so they'll be available for you. But at this time, we'll be happy to answer any questions for you.
Chief, you mentioned the one overlap where you have 3 of your 4 houses basically covered or consumed on a circumstance.
Yeah.
How often does that happen?
Well, like you said, it depends on the call. I chose type random situations where this would go, so I guess it depends on what stations when. If those stations were paired, you might have an engine and ambulance go together, so that would close one station. So it's difficult to answer that question completely accurately. It just depends on the situation.
Okay.
We just know that overall, that situation happens around 64% of the time.
Okay. And you mentioned a structure fire basically would pretty much utilize the entire department?
Correct.
based on the staffing recommendations.
Correct.
I'm assuming that we don't have many of those anymore. Is that a fair assessment, or do we still have some?
Well, historically, through the whole fire service, I mean, the goal was to decrease fires through fire prevention, that type of stuff.
Yep.
So that is true. But I don't have that exact number with me. I don't know if Chief remembers it offhand. We do have a monthly report that we do, and then an annual report that we could look towards. But yeah, there are several smaller fires that start off with that full response, but then we back it down if it's not a fully working fire. So, but we'll be happy to get you that number, and it can be found in our annual reports as well.
Chief, you mentioned that full response on Friday evening, 6 o'clock, was one of those down Alexis Avenue. And I wasn't sure what the circumstances, but I was going both ways, seeing the fire and seeing the response. And has that been the standard that many resources get called out for a structure fire?
Well, I will tell you quite honestly, the national standard is actually to run 4 personnel on an engine. We run 3 in Sylvania because we do a great job training and hiring our individuals. But Toledo, on a similar type fire, they will send upwards to 30 to 40 people just on a standard fire. So they send just as much apparatus and more. Yeah.
What is the standard response time, and then how does that response time change when we need to rely on our neighbors? Because that seems to be the main thing we're trying to prevent here, right, is that increase of time. Do you know what that difference is?
In general, the 8 minutes is kind of like the average, what you try to shoot for. We better that most of the time. Chief, would you agree with that?
Yes.
When you start talking mutual aid, it depends on where they're coming from. Richfield, who we count on mutual aid, doesn't staff full-time, so they have to wait for volunteers to come in. Springfield will depend on what station they're at and that type of thing. So you definitely run the risk of doubling that, possibly more, depending on who you're calling.
And that's definitely important minutes.
It is, yeah, especially in the situation of cardiac arrest or a fire where fire doubles every minute. So obviously that makes situations worse if it's longer.
Mr. McGann, your question was, I think, or perhaps it was Mr. Fry. 4 working structure fires last month.
Last month?
Last month.
Okay.
And then there's various other fires that may take multiple resources as well. Large car fires. We had the $1 million loss of the helium that morning over on the expressway with the semi. So that occupied quite a few resources to close off the expressway and keep everybody safe from that.
Nye and Bennett, thank you for your needs assessment. It's very compelling, no doubt about that. But if city council is ready, I'm going to move on to a finance question, probably for the gentleman sitting down behind you. We appreciate you being here, Oliver. And I asked you this question when you made the presentation in the mayor's office several months ago. But I think council needs to know as well where Sylvania stands on a per capita basis for the cost of fire service now, and how it ranks throughout the county or the area, and then where we'll be with the addition of 2.5 mils, which is going to be like a 40% increase over the current millage. So, and it's going to seem high when it first goes in because it's going to be there for several years and it'll tick down every year. But I think I and members of council need to know where the cost per resident is for not just the city, for your whole service area. I don't know if you have those numbers ready for me with you or not.
I do. I have the first set of numbers. In terms of the average cost, so what we did was we analyzed the budgets for local jurisdictions and divided that by the populations served. And that's the 2024 budget. So for us, that produced a cost per capita. On the low end, you had Perrysburg City, which was $236.10 per resident. On the higher side was Perrysburg Township, which was $449.66 per citizen. So this generated an average looking at 7 different jurisdictions, including Sylvania in that total. The average was $312.89, and Sylvania was right at $319.81. So we were statistically very close to that average.
So the current millage puts you pretty average.
Correct.
And we know in the state of Ohio, when you add millage, you go up high, and then it ticks down as the actual value, the collected assessment goes down. But again, you have 12 or 13 mills of voted millage, 6 mills of actual millage. This is going to increase you by 40%. Where is that going to put you per capita after it passes?
Right. What we can do is, we don't have that figure right now, but we can inquire with the other jurisdictions about their plans over the next 6 years, so we can try to project that. So for example, right now, Springfield Township has a total of 6 mills on the levy, so we could adjust those numbers. I think it may be more difficult to compare that to, for example, the city of Toledo, where the cost for the fire department is aggregated in their general fund.
That's really not comparable, I agree.
Sure, but we can certainly fine tune that with what we know.
Can we just explain, there's a big range between the city of Perrysburg and Perrysburg Township. One's almost twice what the other one is. So that's the kind of question I will get when people ask me, should they vote for the levy or not?
Sure.
And those numbers, we need to have them in our back pockets.
Can I add something to the end of that one? The city of Perrysburg provides less than half of the amount of resources that we do and a comparable amount of runs. So I don't know much else about the financial data, but I think that alone is probably, representing the majority of that number disparity.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And Mr. Turner kind of briefly touched on it, but just to make it clear for everybody, the levy ask in November, actually the goal is to make that last 6 years, so that tick down would go quite a distance.
Collected amount always goes down. Schools have a terrible time with it, so do fire departments. Unless it's inside millage, it loses its value, but the value is set when it's voted. So we appreciate that answer, and we'll look forward to getting that. Yeah, another question that I think I always ask when you gentlemen come to the mayor's staff meeting is about the balance between when you get assistance from outside of your district, from Springfield or someplace else. Does that balance out with you giving help to nearby communities?
Get to the right page of the report.
Yeah, it's right in there, Chief. We look at it every month.
I know, I gotta find the right page though. All right, you want the yearly total?
That's fine.
Aid given to Richfield was 18, Springfield was 79, and Toledo was 10. We received from Springfield 42, from Richfield 32, from Toledo Fire 9, Whiteford Township was one, and the 180th was one. That's likely their air wagon.
Well, the point is,
Yeah.
it's a two-way street. Just because Sylvania is well-equipped and well-funded doesn't mean you're always helping somebody else nearby that isn't. It goes both ways. Okay,
Just as a follow-up, if I may, Mayor.
certainly.
When you provide mutual aid to Springfield Township, or they provide mutual aid to us, what's the economics on that? Do you send them a bill, they send you a bill? Is it just you taking the same money and going back and forth? How does the money get?
No money's exchanged.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
No money's exchanged. And a lot of those with Springfield is, we had to develop a plan when ODOT decided to put the Jersey barriers up on 23 South. So our units respond to a lot of the between Central Avenue and Airport Highway responses for any accidents. And then they take the northbound between Airport and Central. So that's where a lot of those come into play.
Right.
So
That
not
makes
so
sense.
much.
Based on the way that getting
Right.
on and off the highway.
Right, we all know that there's more accidents on the expressway right now, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Fry, the only slight economic factor in that would be if we respond to Springfield, we actually bill their residents for transport if we do that, and then they do the same.
Right, but I meant
Right.
between the governmental bodies. Yeah.
Thank you for that additional information.
Anytime. Feel free to email us or let us know if you have anything further after you digest that a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We're now on to agenda item 6. Mr. Shaw, would you like to do this introduction, please?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. It is my great privilege to introduce to you Eric Barnes. He is our new Deputy Service Director that we hired a couple of months ago. He officially started work last week. There's nobody more excited than myself to have him on board.
And the good news is he came back for another week.
Eric comes to us highly regarded from Hancock County Engineer's Office. He was one of the chief deputies there. Graduate of Ohio Northern, lives in Perrysburg. I'll let you kind of fill in some of the gaps about yourself. So,
Yeah, just a little bit about me. Actually grew up right down 75 in Sydney, Ohio. Went to Ohio Northern University, graduated civil engineering. Met my wife, and she's from the Toledo area. Moved here after college. I worked for Shelby County Engineer's Office in Sydney. Worked our way up 75. Moved to Perrysburg. She's a civil engineer up in Toledo. So we kind of found our way in here. I was at Hancock County Engineer's Office for a little under 5 years. Learned a lot about government. It's kind of my passion. What I really enjoy, helping the people, talking to the people, seeing the project start to finish. It's very fulfilling. So I'm really looking forward to starting here. I have nothing but great things to say about Hancock County. We left on great terms. I know it was a little long, but it was a great experience, and I'm very excited to be here and to meet everyone here and serve the city of Sylvania. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you being here, Eric.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. We will.
All right.
All right. Mr. Shaw has a couple of the next items are his. Agenda item 7 is the traffic signal improvement project for Room Road and Room Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had bids, open bids at the end of August for the traffic signal improvement that we're planning for at Flower Hospital's Realign Drive with Haroon and Ravine. We had taken 4 bids at the end of August, with the lowest being submitted by Helms & Sons Excavating from Findlay, Ohio. Their bid of $1,401,475.50 was about 5% plus under the engineer's estimate. So very good there. We had good numbers, 3 pretty interested contractors, 1 not so interested contractor. But Helms has helped us with numerous projects over the last few years. They came to us from Findlay in 2018 and have done 3 projects for us since then. So they're an ODOT pre-qualified contractor. They're well-versed to do projects just like this. and we're excited to have them on board. And happy to entertain any questions.
Mr. Shaw, the loan that's referred to here, the $246,000 paid over 10 years, what's the interest rate on that?
It varies, but it's probably around, I'm gonna say like 3.5 without having looked it up. It's probably around 3.5%. I will say that you can take those loans out, but we have past practice with OPW, sometimes paying those off after the first time it comes due. But that's completely a discussion the finance department and I have with that.
Okay.
The reason this is kind of unique, we usually don't do grant loan applications with OPWC. It does help you with points. This one needed some additional help with points, so we decided to do the grant loan option with that. Yep.
If you add those numbers up, not including the loan amount, but if you add up the grant dollars, it's about $1 million worth of grants going towards this $1.4 million project. It's about $400,000 in local funds to get this work done.
Yep.
That's just terrific, Joe. We appreciate that.
You bet.
We know that you do well. We just had a round of grants that was a little bit contentious down at Temacog. Council might want to hear that story just so that they know.
Sure.
Let you say the numbers. I know what they are, I think, but why don't you tell us?
Sure. There was some, maybe the right word, unpleasantness with the amount of take that comes out of the Temacog pot of money that Toledo gets. About $20 million is what the allocation is on a biannual basis, especially in the surface transportation program with our Temacog monies. And as scored and as awarded, about 16 million of that went to Toledo, so almost 80 cents on every dollar goes to them. That ruffled this year. That ruffled some feathers amongst, and it varies. Some years it's a little more like this. Some years it's a little bit less. Just kind of depends on some of the projects. But I would say, many of our small partners, including our county engineers in Wood County and Lucas County, had some heartburn with those types of numbers. But ultimately, they ended up recommending to move forward with the solicitation as is. But they will be doing a review of not only the scoring on how it goes, but also looking for ways to possibly cap the number of applications and or dollar amount that a particular organization can submit. So those may be things that come out of that committee. I will be involved with that. I chaired technical advisory committee, and I was asked to participate in that discussion as well. And I'll be happy to report how that goes in a few months.
Mr. Mayor, I was at that meeting, and I agree with Mr. Shaw. There was some general heartburn. I don't know what's ultimately going to come out. I mean, Mr. Shaw and other people that have a lot higher level of technical expertise in this area certainly will come back with recommendations. But the general thought process around the room and the various elected officials and that were sitting there was that while they were miffed, going backwards to revise a scoring system after things have already been determined is not the right thing to do. That's because if you do it for one, then you run the risk of us having the same problem in the future where we get beyond our reasonable allocation because we have some project that necessarily needs to get funded later on. So that was the consensus in the room.
Well said.
This is not an unprecedented situation. I used to sit, when elected officials were on the OPWC award committee, we had to address this issue several times and looked at the criteria for scoring on several occasions to try and balance it out. Our service department does very well in the grant application pre-scoring to see where they're going to do and try to estimate what the score needs to be. Toledo did a better job this year than they sometimes do. But I wanted to point out that, yes, Toledo got 16 million. Lucas County got about $500,000.
That's correct.
Wood County got about $500,000.
Correct.
Guess who else got about $500,000? City of Sylvania. We're right up there with Lucas County and Wood County. So well done.
Thank you.
I brought that up because we are always talking about OPWC dollars for these projects. You can see that this one we're just talking about got 468,000 of it. That would have been a few years ago. Okay. With that, you have ordinance 103, 2024 in front of you to award this contract to Helms and Sons. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 103, 2024, accepting the bid of Helms and Sons Excavating, Inc. and awarding the contract for the Haroon Road and Marine Drive intersection improvement project the same, authorizing the expenditure for the improvements in the amount of $1,401,475.50, appropriating funds therefore, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 103, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 103, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. On to agenda item 8. This is a final change order for Monroe Haroon and Monroe Kroger intersections. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The aforementioned Helms and Sons was our contractor that was on that project. We have since completed our work items, and as a result, we need to adjust the final contract price based on those quantity underruns and overruns. You have a pretty detailed list of 64 items that are included in this last change order on the project. This is our only change order on the project. And when all of our quantity underruns and overruns are done, we have a deduction in $56,605.67 to decrease our contract amount. Overall, construction went fairly well. We had our issues to deal with like any project, but overall it was a successful project at a very busy intersection, always difficult to accomplish those projects, but pleased with the overall amount.
Questions from Mr. Shaw? Project turned out looking very nice. It is helping with traffic flow. We need to accept this final change order. We have proposed ordinance 104, 2024 to do it. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 104, 2024 by title only, authorizing the mayor and director of finance to approve change order number 1, final, to this city's agreement with Helms and Sons Excavating, Inc. for the Monroe and Haroon improvement project, decreasing the contract amount by $56,605.67, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 104, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 104, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Now up to agenda item 9. You see that we have ordinance 105. This is to approve the banner application from the Sylvania Area Chamber of Commerce for the Fall Festival. Again, all banner applications have to come in here. Here's a picture of it, but this is an annual banner that we put over Main Street for the Fall Festival. They're gonna put it up here at the end of the month, as long as we give them approval. Any questions concerning this one? Mr. Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of ordinance number 105-2024 as an emergency measure, approving the banner application of the Sylvania Area Chamber of Commerce, authorizing the zoning administrator to indicate such approval on behalf of the city of Sylvania, and I move adoption of ordinance number 105-2024 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 105, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 105, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. All right, that brings us up to agenda item 10. Hope I haven't jinxed you on OPWC applications. But that's just the way it is. It's gonna come and go every year. We do the best you can. You've got some to turn in here before
Thank you.
our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is always one of the most competitive grants that we go for every year. A single point makes a huge difference in this program with OPWC. We have 2 applications that we'll be looking to submit. This particular application has 2 projects within it. One of the projects is our recently awarded safety funds to convert our strobe lights that are at our school crossings that we are not getting a lot of compliance with motor vehicles, and switching them over to pedestrian hybrid beacons at 4 of our locations. If you recall, we were successfully able to get over $1 million of safety funding to help us with that effort. And so what we like to do when we apply for OPWC funds is it allows us to leverage an additional project. So in this particular case, we were able to take Monroe Street, Summit Street, and Main Street's traffic signal improvements that we're doing at those 2 locations and throw it into this application. Normally, if I were to submit this project on its own, the chances of it scoring as a standalone project are not great, but by leveraging the federal funds, it allows us to be more competitive, and as a result, we think we can successfully get OPWC funding to help us out. So in this particular application, we've got the ODOT safety funds that are listed there. City of Sylvania would contribute approximately 25% at around $500,000, and we're asking OPWC grant application dollars just under $400,000 at $389,910. So that's the request, and we would request authorization to pursue those grant funds. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have resolution number 13, 2024, to authorize this application to be submitted. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 13, 2024 by title only. A resolution authorizing the mayor and director of finance to file an Ohio Public Works Commission grant application for pedestrian hybrid beacons and the Monroe Street, Main Street, Summit Street signal improvement project, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 13, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and resolution 13, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Okay, we're now up to 10C. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And our second application that we will be submitting for is the largest project that I think we will have ever undertaken, at least in my time here at the City of Sylvania, and that's our US 23 and Monroe Street Interchange project. This is the last piece of funding to secure, last piece of the puzzle. Your letter has 6 different funding sources. Pretty creative way to put this one together, but overall, hopefully successful here with our last one, which is the OPWC grant application. So to cover the total cost of the interchange project is just under $34 million. For this, we're asking for $1 million in OPWC grant funds. That's a high ask in the program. Usually you don't see, at least for our district, asks for $1 million plus, so we're right at that higher end of it. It scores very well, a ton of traffic counts, lots of accident problems, so we're pretty sure that this one will probably be a good funded project. But $1 million is kind of where we cap out, and you start to lose points aggressively in the application if you go over that amount. So that's the reason for the request.
The funding for the interchange improvements is a great success for the City of Sylvania and our service department. Many jurisdictions will be paying a higher percentage of this $34 million project than we are. It's still going to cost our capital improvement funds $4.35 million. That's a lot of funds. I know that the finance department has been preparing for that, and we are equipped to be able to take that out of our capital improvement fund. This is not a surprise to us. This is very good news that we can get this done. These funds all have to be in place and encumbered prior to the start of the project. Is that correct?
We will be paying this in the first quarter of next year. We'll actually not just encumber it, we will pay the $4 million.
Disperse it to ODOT?
Correct. When we do these projects and they sell and administer it, you have to submit your portion of the project up front. And then they show the state that the funds that are necessary outside of ODOT are technically encumbered. And so that's the reason for the upfront payment. We probably won't see it come back until sometime in 2026 with any adjustments that needed to go down or up. But this would be our payment upfront.
Again, this is a 2-year project.
Right, correct.
An entry ramp heading southbound, an exit ramp heading northbound, and intersection changes at Alexis and Monroe in 2025, and bridge reconstruction in 2026.
Got it.
And everybody wants to know, how long will the bridge be closed?
Sure. It's always good to revisit that. Schools is kind of what we base everything on. This is a huge impact to our school systems. As you can imagine, Northview bridges, literally bridges, both sides of the interchange. So they've always asked for us to disrupt the beginning part of their school year rather than the end. So if you take 2026, August-ish, and then backwards 5 months, that gives you roughly a March to an August bridge closure to do the work. And that's how the plans are set up for that.
6 months.
Oh, we can probably do it 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm comfortable saying 5. Hopefully 4, but hopefully I'm pretty sure 5, we can do it. So.
But you're not the one running the project, ODOT is, right?
No, I'm not. You're
Okay,
right.
fair enough, just checking.
And you brought up another specter. If there's cost overruns, what is the city's obligation?
Sure, it just depends. So it could be aesthetics, if it was an aesthetics overrun, it could be something else. That it really is on a project of this size. It kind of just depends is the kind of bad answer.
And where do we stand on the aesthetics? Council's looked at that probably more than a year ago.
Sure.
Where do we stand on the aesthetics package?
Cost estimate that you have here is inclusive of about $250,000 of aesthetics work. That's stuff over and above what ODOT usually pays for. So things like vandal fencing to make it look good, decorative parapet walls, items like those, some decorative lighting that goes on the bridge deck. Those are basically your over and above. So ODOT will always pay for whatever is a standard bridge. And then if you want to dress it up with different features, you pay that cost overage. And the way that shapes up is about $250,000 right now.
Well, those are in these project estimates.
They are in those estimates, yep. Correct.
Further questions from members of council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Hammond?
just a comment, $4.3 million is a lot of money, but it's still amazing that we're only paying 13% of the total. I mean, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about all the grant work that Mr. Shaw does.
ODOT's not super happy with me with all of these because it's a tough thing to manage, but my job was to get the money and then they can manage it from there. So that's the setup.
It's all these different programs that makes this possible. Working what's available.
$33 million is so much money too. I'm trying to think of that as like a building term, and that's a big building.
It's a new middle school. Yep. Okay. We want the $1 million, so let's pass this resolution. 14, 2024. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 14, 2024 by title only. A resolution authorizing the mayor and director of finance to file a grant application with the Ohio Public Works Commission for the US 23 Monroe Street Interchange project, and I move passage as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 14, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 14, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Thank you for your work putting these together, Joe. Let's not change the criteria or maximum so that we can't be awarded in this year's grants. All right, on to agenda item 11. In your council packets, you'll see that there's a packet of 3 different possibilities for knee wall standards. These went to the Plan Commission Architectural Board of Review for their input. They took a look at them last week and made their own comments individually at the Plan Commission last week. And Joe, maybe you should go through the 3 alternatives, but the Plan Commission kind of liked the second one.
Sure. Yep, a good introduction to it. So they did their review as tasked, and their recommendation was option 2. So just to kind of walk you through, option 1 is pretty much a solid brick wall with no breaks in it. Option 2 softens that and reduces the amount of brick, but puts fencing in between the two. If you're trying to picture what that would look like, Sodders is a very good representation of that with some decorative black fencing there, but this would have obviously vegetation that would go with it. And then 3 is kind of a quasi of both of those, where it's a little more brick, but you lose the fencing and bridge the gap in between the brick facades with more vegetation. They reviewed it, I think primarily for cost. They liked option number 2, and that was their recommendation.
One of them looked at cost, a couple of them looked at appearance.
Sure.
They looked at it from different angles. And why is the city looking to select one of these at this time, Joe?
Sure. Our design guidelines that we have for our Gateway Architectural District specify a knee wall, and that would be for parking areas in the front, areas between the sidewalk and the building. So if you have front parking, the design guidelines call for these knee walls. We have one project right now that is interested in updating their site. This is Frickers. They have the vacant property that's to the west side of them. They want to expand that into more parking. And so anytime redevelopment occurs, you want to apply, the standards that we have for our design guidelines. And without the definition of what this is going to look like, we wanted to make sure we had that in place in case more businesses up and down Monroe Street develop that have front parking, and we can institute this standard.
Members of the Plan Commission inquired if the city was going to go back and coerce current property owners to make these improvements, and that's not the case. This only comes into play for redevelopment of sites.
That's correct.
And no, we're not going to tear down the existing remaining stone rubble walls at Toledo Memorial Park and have them put this up either. This is just when, like at Frickers, they're going to build some more parking lot. We're going to screen that parking from Monroe Street and make it look better.
The only thing I'll add is our Parks and Forestry Department has been active on the side, going through vegetation that they like and finding the correct trees they want to use and shrubs. So that still is kind of a work in progress, but they've at least tasked with option 2, and per council's recommendation, they wanted to review this as well. So we would ask for this to be assigned to the appropriate council committee for further review.
Although there's no council approval required for this, correct?
The agenda calls for this to be referred to a council committee for review.
For
Council
comment?
needs to adopt one of these or doesn't, Joe?
We just want their.
We just
We'd
went
like
through
your input on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's an input, not an approval.
The goal at the end of the process would hopefully be able to have one of these options selected in a standard packet that we could hand to a developer like Frickers and say, okay, option 2, or this is what we'd like to see for knee walls that are required.
Well, I, for one, am fine with option 2 without looking at it anymore. I don't have any specific questions or concerns. I'll defer to the rest of council, but we don't need a meeting to have a meeting. And I don't think I have any additional questions that I need to be answered. I'm comfortable with this selection that has been made.
Members of council have questions or concerns about
Option 2.
directing up the service department to adopt or to use option 2?
I think option 2 will look good without putting too much of a burden on potential developments.
All right, we'll continue to work with our forestry department to come up with the right plantings and authorize you to proceed with that.
Very good.
It would be nice if you, when they're all done, if you just report back to us.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good work.
All right, we're now ready to go to page 2 of our agenda, item 12. We're up to proposed resolution 11. This is to adopt the Lucas County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Ms. Brining or Mr. Shaw?
Sure, I'll give it a whirl. So as a part of Lucas County's hazard cooperative that we belong to, you're required to take a look at these plans on a 5-year basis. So, God forbid, you need some hazard mitigation funding. One of the federal requirements is that your plan is updated on a 5-year basis. So this is that 5-year period. They go to, Lucas County asks for all of the cooperative jurisdictions to do the same, to pass a resolution adopting the hazard mitigation plan. And then once they have all of those, then they can do a formal adoption on their end as well as the author of the plan. So just a 5-year update. I wish I had some more bullet point things to say that changed, but there were no significant changes in this plan.
Not seeing any questions. We do have proposed resolution 11, 2024. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce resolution number 11, 2024, read by title only. A resolution of the Council of the City of Sylvania adopting the Lucas County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. I move for passage of resolution number 11, 2024 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 11, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 11, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 13. This is a annual resolution that we have to pass concerning our city property tax rates. When I saw this last Thursday, I was distressed because of the decrease of $193,000. And I instructed Mr. Schroyer to get in touch with the county auditor's office for an explanation. And two pieces came back. First, this assessment is based on current property values in Lucas County, not the proposed 29% increase that we're all probably hearing about from our friends and neighbors. So it's not gonna, it'll be higher. The real number that's collected will be higher, especially on the inside millage. It will not be a decrease. But the decrease that it's showing from last year's to this year's, $193,000, can be attributed to one tax abatement that we have authorized and is finally coming on board. SOMO, $37 million development. That's what it looks like for the city's portion of that assessment. Is that a 10-year abatement? 15 years. At the end of 15 years, we'll get it back. And so will the schools.
It's a good buy.
It is a good buy. I don't dispute that at all. Council made that decision several years ago, but that is why it's showing a decrease of $193,000 from last year. It's attributed to that project, but when we actually have funding or tax receipts come in next year, we'll be up, assuming, well, not next year, won't. I'm sorry. The following year? The following year, when the new assessment rates go in for 2025, because the current rates are for 2024, which are collected next year. Okay. So this is an annual resolution to be approved. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce the resolution number 12, 2024, and read by title only. Resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. I move for passage of a resolution number 12, 2024 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Moved and seconded for passage of resolution number 12, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and resolution 12, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 14 was a referral to the Planning Commission concerning changes to the plat and special use permit for the Mercurio development up on Alexis Road. They've gotten back to City Council and has recommended to approve the proposed amendments to that. We discussed it here last week. It has to do with taking the two parcels on the north side of Alexis out of the residential zoning, giving them a business zoning, and they're no longer be part of the homeowners association. And the second part was to allow it to be condominiumized rather than rental units. Am I remembering it correctly? Okay, you can read that more fully in the meeting minutes that are part of this council packet, but you don't need to take any action at this time because we've already set that public hearing for our next meeting on October the 7th. Mr. Mercurio was in attendance. Agenda item 15 is another recommendation back from the Planning Commission, and this was a change in our zoning code concerning car washes and allowable dog washes with it. We currently do not have car washes included in our special uses section of the building code. This is to make them a special use. The one that we have out at Erie Street and Centennial did require was a special use because it's attached to a service station. That's why that one is in there. But we need to have that in the code to have more control. It's a rumor that I heard, I can't even tell you where I heard it, that somebody was proposing a possible car wash caddy corner from that one out there where the Rite Aid is right now. Rite Aid across from caddy corner where the Rite Aid is now is a possible car wash location. It's not been turned in. We have nothing to share with you. I just heard a rumor about that someplace. This one, concerning this amendment in proposed ordinance 99, 2024, you need to set the public hearing date for this one. And the clerk is recommending November the 4th. Mr. Haney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we set a public hearing for proposed ordinance number 99-2024 for November 4, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded to set the public hearing for this special use permit for the ordinance change, for the amending of our ordinance that is proposed to be set for Monday, November the 4th at 7 p.m. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the clerk is directed to advertise that public hearing. Okay. You're all the way up to agenda item 16. These dates, we used to pick these dates later in the year, but because of the publication of a city calendar, we need to authenticate these dates of council meeting times farther in advance so they can be shown on our community calendar together with the planning commission meetings. Are there any special changes here?
So all the holidays that fall on Monday, the meeting has been scheduled for a Tuesday.
So that would be January 21st, February 18th.
September 2nd.
September 2nd, there it is. Other than that, it's on the regular first and third Monday nights in the month. I think that one takes one motion. But let me go on to the next one. We haven't had trick or treat this year yet, but we need to set it for next year as well. That can be a second motion for approval of trick or treat dates next year. And October 31st is a Friday, and that would have set off alarm bells in the past. But now the high school football schedule is accelerated to earlier in the year because of the longer playoff schedule. And our local high school games are done the Friday ahead of this. So unless they're in the playoffs and have a home game, it won't interfere with trick or treat at all. So let's go back to 16A. I need a motion to set our regular council meeting minutes.
Before we do that.
Oh, sorry.
Leslie found a mistake that I made and corrected it.
In July, the meeting will be the 21st of July.
Not the 14th. So-
Not the 14th.
Thank you.
Okay, I need a motion to approve this revised schedule.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the revised schedule for the council meetings and the planning commission meetings for the year of 2025.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve this schedule of regular meetings of city council and the planning commission for 2025. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then, Mr. Fry, I need another motion to set the trick-or-treating date and keep it as October 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to set the date for trick or treating in 2025 on Friday, October 31st. When do we typically do that at?
6 to 7:30.
6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve October 31st, 2025 as trick-or-treat night. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We learned our lesson a few years ago, never move it off of the 31st.
Moved it for a Northview Southview game, right?
I think that's
Yeah.
what we did it for, and we had a lot of people show up in our community from other communities.
Right.
It didn't. Okay. On to agenda item 17. Mr. Shaw has a vehicle he would like to put on Gov Deals. Which division is this from, Mr. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is from our sewer department. We had a vehicle in the capital improvement budget, a new truck. We've since received it. We did a little shuffling where the one that we were getting rid of, the vehicle maintenance fleet manager would like to still secure that one. And then the one that he was driving is actually the one that's up for no longer in use. So a 2006 Ford F-250 is what's being requested to be posted to Gov Deals.
Only 18 years.
I don't know the mileage. I would be embarrassed to probably say.
That's a long time to keep a vehicle in service. We need a motion to approve that listing. Mr. McCain.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Move to authorize the city to be able to put this on gov.deals website for sale.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to list this vehicle on govdeals.com. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
As a quick note, I don't know how I feel about a date after my high school graduation being considered too old for a vehicle.
Oh, gee.
Think about how your dad feels about this. Okay, that gets us up to agenda item 18. Mr. Jeff Schaff, a member of our Plan Commission for the last 4 years, who's currently serving as chair. His term expires at the end of this year. I inquired with him last Wednesday night if he was willing to serve another term. He agreed, and I have reappointed him and request your confirmation of that reappointment. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that we confirm your appointment of Mr. Jeff Schaff to the Municipal Planning Commission for a term commencing January 1st, 2025 and expiring December 31st, 2028.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Jeff Schaff to the Municipal Plan Commission. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 19, are there any committee reports to be made at this time? Or agenda item 20, committee referrals? Hearing none, we are up to added agenda item 21, which is an executive session to discuss the purchase or sale of real estate. I need a motion to go into executive session, go into committee of the whole executive session.
So moved.
Second.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mr. Hayner?
Yes.
Mr. McCann?
Yes.
Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Dow?
Yes.
Vote is 6-0, so we're going into committee of the whole executive session. Thank you for being here, Sharon.
ones.
Oh, that's why. No, I didn't.
It was real subtle.
He was out of the room, but he heard everything. Is there anybody out in the other room? Okay, then let the record show the city council has returned from committee of the whole executive session. Only item in executive session was a discussion of real estate sale and purchase. No action was taken in executive session, and no action will be taken at this time as a result of the executive session. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the council meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and the city council stands adjourned until our next meeting, 3 weeks from tonight on Monday, October the 7th at 7:30 PM. Thank you for the discussion and direction.